In this example, I want to cover creating a custom GPT using ChatGPT. So maybe an example of this would be like, I want to turn my voice and tone guide from my brand into like a GPT. So like, maybe marketing people can talk to it and say like, hey, how would I turn this into the right voice and tone for my brand? So we're going to look at making a custom GPT. One note I should say is it does require a paid OpenAI plan. So you do have to pay the $20 a month to have ChatGPT 4. For that example, you do need to pay for this. So if you don't want to pay for it, you can just follow along and see the experience from my point of view. But if you do want to make your own and maybe play with it a little bit yourself, then you do need to pay. So first thing we're going to do is we'll log into ChatGPT, and then you'll come over here and hit Explore GPTs. Now, there are a bunch of sort of featured ones or ones you can use from other folks, but in this case, let's go ahead and hit create. And what's kind of interesting about this particular example is that unlike, say, training another model where you actually have to build your data set, here you're going to kind of say like, hey, I've got these things, like I want you to start building or like maybe narrowing the ChatGPT responses down to these areas. So the first thing you're going to say is, what do you want to make? So let's say a voice and tone guide for marketers. And let's spell this correctly. And it's going to sort of say like, okay, I'm updating. Is it done? Let's see. And then it's going to try to give you like a cool fancy name. Marking Muse is fine. Sure. That's an interesting response. The recipient must be in the form of tool underscore name dot function underscore name. Okay, that's interesting. I'm just going to assume that works. Here's a profile picture of the app. Do you like it as is, or would you want to make any changes? It is fine as is. It's kind of funny that it like prioritizes like building a brand and a name for this app rather than like just getting started. Okay, so let's refine the context a bit more. To start, how detailed should the advice be? Should it focus more on general principles and strategies, or delve into specific examples and case studies? Delve into specific examples and case studies. I like that because it's a chat interface, like these aren't buttons, you have to like respond as a text. Again, little things that I would love to see like a UX designer actually kind of think about and be like, okay, not everything needs to be a text response in this tool. Now, should the guidance include references to current marketing trends and best practices, or should it remain timeless and focus solely on fundamental principles? Let's say include references. And what is kind of nice is that as you do this, it sort of builds up sort of what you might experience. So for example, there's some questions here around, how do I write these things, or how do I make my brand voice more unique? What I don't really love about this so far is that it's purely just like, here's what GPT already knows. But I actually have a bunch of documentation that I want to begin to upload and set up. And we'll do that in a minute, but it doesn't really like forefront that. It just assumes that we can just like narrow the GPT set down. Should the responses lean towards being more formal and professional, or more casual and conversational? Let's say more formal and professional. But what I am intrigued by is how this tool really doesn't, it doesn't assume that you have any data for this. It's just going to help build this for you, which I can imagine for a lot of people would actually be very helpful. But in my case, I do have sort of a clear use case I'm going to try to get to as soon as possible. Lastly, how would you like Marketing Muse to handle situations where specific marketing terms or concepts aren't familiar to the user? Should it provide definitions and explanations automatically, or wait for the user to ask for clarification? That's a good question. I would say let's have it provide definitions and explanations automatically. Something went wrong generating your GPT. There was an error generating a response. Let's regenerate. There we go. Let's see how this works. Marketing Muse is now fine-tuned to provide formal professional advice on voice and tone for marketing, including current trends and best practices. It will offer detailed guidance through examples and case studies, explain marketing terms automatically, and adjust advice based on specific user needs. Feel free to try it out in the preview. If you have any refinements, let me know. Okay, cool. So we're set up here. So now let's just click on one of these to make sure it's working. Tips for a more engaging newsletter. I feel like everybody always needs that. Oh, God, I hate that it just does this, like, I'm typing thing. Just give me the answer, please. Know your audience, compelling subject lines, segment your list, high quality visuals, interactive elements. That's interesting. I don't know that a newsletter can do interactive stuff, but okay. Valuable and relevant content. Okay, so here we go. We've got our prompt here. We've got our tool. We're going to come over here and hit save. And I'm going to make this available to anyone with links. So I will actually share this with you. You can play around with it and see it if it actually works any better. Okay, so we're going to hit confirm. Okay, so now let's take a look at how to actually customize this with custom documents. So I got Marketing Muse over here. I'm going to go ahead and hit the, let's see what I want to hit, the new chat icon. Is that it? Here we go, edit GPT. So what I want to do is I want to click on Marketing Muse and then hit edit GPT. And I'm going to click in the configure tab here. So let's go ahead and hit configure. If you wanted to edit any of your sort of default experiences that customers see, you can do that here. But what I want to get to is I actually want to upload files. So I'm going to go, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually pull the voice and tone guidelines from MailChimp, and we're going to use that as a way to import sort of their knowledge into this GPT. So I'm going to come over here. This particular website is a voice and tone style guide from MailChimp, and it has a bunch of web pages. So I think what I can do, I'm going to try this out and see if this works the way I expect it to. I think I can just save these as HTML files. So I'm going to save each one of these as an HTML file. And let's see if I can import those. So upload files. And we'll go to, where did that save to? Desktop, I hope? Yep, there we go. So we'll open this. And what I can do now is I'm just going to go ahead and import every one of these. So I'll hit save. And I'll import each of these. Okay, so I'm not going to bore you and watch me upload each one of these. So I'm going to upload each one of these, and then I'll come back in the video and we'll take a look at what happens. So I've gone ahead and uploaded each of those HTML files from the MailChimp website. So now I have, I don't know, like 10, 15 files here that all come from their best practices in their content style guide. One last thing I want to do before I finish this is I'm going to turn off the DALL-E image generation. I guess when I share this with marketers, like I don't really care about them generating images. Maybe you could. Maybe there would be a way to say, like, what are the best images to create when generating newsletters, and you would let the DALL-E tool sort of generate those. In this case, I want to focus really just on the words and that sort of thing for this tool. So I'm actually going to turn this off. I am going to use the conversation data that we go back and forth with the GPT in order to update the model. So at this point, I think I have everything in here that I want. Let's go ahead and hit update. And we'll hit confirm. Okay, so now there is View GPT. And let's go ahead. There's some notes in here that I want to talk about. So I think there was, let's see, writing about people. So as a part of an audience, don't capitalize audience unless it's grammatically necessary. Don't refer to audience as it. Audiences are made up of real people, so they should always use they. Okay, so let's go ahead and just ask this marketing muse, what principles should I follow when writing about audiences? You'll see here it's saying like it's searching my knowledge, right? So it is looking up what it's been told through these documentation. And here you go. It actually did read in my data. So it says key principles include not capitalizing audience unless grammatically required, using they instead of it to acknowledge the individuals in the audience, and being mindful when referring to specific features like look-ahead audiences to prevent confusion. And if I come over here, there's a feature in our app called Lookalike Audiences, which is a way for our customers to market to people who are similar to their existing contacts. Always use the lookalike qualifier when referring to this feature to avoid confusion. Now, I will say I think these instructions are a little bit more clear than what's been put through here. It's sort of been put through the ChatGPT mush of fire and makes it a little less clear. But again, if you've got a customer who's only ever looking at this, or is trying to write using ChatGPT, then this might be a good example of a tool that you can do to create this. So let's actually try something here. So I'm going to say write a paragraph about how customers can use our audience tools to save them time and money. And let's see if this tool now actually knows what it's doing. I mean, it looks pretty good to me. One thing I also see here is that it correctly did not uppercase our audience tools. So actually, if I come back over here, let's try this. So if we use our audience tools, let's see if this model knows to keep audience to lowercase. Okay. I guess because I asked for audience tools, it is responding to that. But then you'll see wherever else it uses audiences, it does keep it lowercase. So it's probably following these rules, but there's some potential for me to sort of force it into a incorrect usage. So I think there's some interesting value to this. I would need to do a lot more experimentation to actually figure out if it was really accurate for customers, for, I guess, our marketing team. But again, there's a lot of really interesting power here, right? We're leveraging all of the ChatGPT world knowledge, but then we're also sort of narrowing its scope and adding in our own documentation to sort of keep it a little bit more like on the straight and narrow. And I think that's a really powerful tool. And what I like about this sort of like training, quote unquote, is that it didn't have to go through this process where I had to like, mark up my data in all the right formats. Like I just sort of upload documents and sort of in the conversational way sort of respond to the GPT to get it in the right direction. And I've now got a custom model that I could technically use anywhere. And that's really powerful and really interesting, and it's sort of a new paradigm, or maybe a different way of thinking about training compared to the sort of current paradigm where everything has to be formatted perfectly, like that sort of thing. So it's an interesting tool. Again, I have not used this enough to say for sure that it's like really accurate or that's really good, but I do think there's something interesting here, and there's some value that could happen with this. So I might play with this a little bit more. I might even just go out and look at like best content design practices. So I can begin to build up this like content design library that maybe isn't just MailChimp focused, but is actually looking at various tools across the world, or maybe other brands. So then I could begin to build up this really interesting maybe content design framework for this. So that's a little bit about ChatGPT custom models. Again, I think they're really fascinating and really interesting. And I would love to see if anyone has any feedback on like what is actually working well on these. I know these have been out for a couple months. I wonder if people have actually like sort of used them in their own practice to see if it's like actually narrowed down to this specific brand. So yeah, that's it for this video.